Hello everyone and welcome to our group coaching video. Today we'll be discussing the progressions of the squat. The main aim is to outline the basic progressions of the back squat and help correct any incorrect squatting techniques like in the video above. So what is the type of audience we are branching out to? We're aiming this video at any technical coaches with weight room responsibilities, new strength and conditioning coaches and also the beginner athlete. So why exactly is it important to learn about progressing the squat? The back squat is commonplace in training programs across many sports and the focus on much research. The ability to coach an athlete's competency in the lift requires both a detailed technical model for the back squat and a toolbox of regressions through which the athlete must learn the right to progress. Simply increasing and decreasing the load is not necessarily enough to develop a quality squat pattern, particularly in new athletes. This video then will be broken down into 6 stages. The first stage, stage 1, will be a 6-point rock. Stage 2 will be a pole squat and also a stability ball squat. Stage 3 will involve the athlete performing a plate squat. Stage 4 will be the goblet squat technique. Stage 5 will be a front squat. And stage 6, the final stage, will involve the athlete performing a back squat. It is hoped that with the appropriate knowledge of how the athlete can be progressed to a back squat, the coach can avoid inappropriate loading and potential injuries. The 6 stages presented are very basic considering the target audience and are used as a checkbox for both the technical models and the common areas a coach can use to decide when and how the athlete should progress. Further, the coach is encouraged to develop their eye when observing athletes performing the squats or any other kind of movement pattern. Does the movement look smooth and athletic? Do you feel comfortable adding load and complexity? The first stage, the 6-point rock, assesses the athlete's mobility at the hip to achieve both deep knee and hip flexion as required in the squat movement. Furthermore, the 6-point rock allows the coach to assess the athlete's pelvic stability by observing the presence of lumbar tucking and the degree of hip flexion at which this occurs. If the athlete can perform a perfect 6-point rock with no lumbar tucking presented at all range of motions, then issues in the squatting are most likely due to a lack of motor control, balance, and or excessive loading. To get the athlete to carry out the 6-point rock, we need to look at the technical model. For the start position, we want the athlete to be positioned on the hands, knees and feet with active toes. We want their feet to be hip width apart, knees slightly wider, so having a similar position to the standing squat. During the descent of the 6-point rock, we want them to shift their torso and their pelvis back towards the heels, and we want them to maintain a neutral spine throughout. When an athlete is carrying out the 6-point rock, the main thing we want to look for as coaches is any lumbar tucking, so that is the rounding of the lower back. If this does occur, we want to take note of the depth, so the degree of the hip flexion, so when it comes to squatting we know the depth they might want to go to. There's also a different 6-point rock variation we can use. As seen above, it is placing the athlete on the forearms, so it's changing the back angle that is more similar to that of a back squat. We're looking for the same thing again here, so we're looking for any lumbar tucking. As you can see in this athlete above, he maintains a neutral spine throughout, therefore he can progress from this stage to the next. So the second stage in progressing an athlete in the squats is a pole or stability pole squats. At this stage, the athlete has demonstrated the capacity to maintain neutral spine throughout full range of movement in a squat when unloaded and supported in a 6-point position. This stage introduces gravity and body weight to the movement, while still removing the balance component of an unsupported squat, allowing the athlete to get comfortable in the bottom position without the need to displace weight forward to their base of support. The goal here is to coach the ability to sit between legs during the squat. The athlete must now demonstrate the ability to achieve full range of motion in a vertical position with some additional load. Position of support is either anterior with the pole squat or posterior with the stability pole squat, and the coach is encouraged to try both to find the appropriate position for the individual athlete. Once the athlete can demonstrate the ability to achieve full range of motion while maintaining neutral spine with support, then they can be progressed. For an athlete to carry out the pole squat, they need to stand facing the pole with their feet just over hip width, toes between forward and 30 degrees out depending on the athlete. The athlete should select a position he considers comfortable and safe, with the coach experimenting with different stances while watching the athlete solve the movement problem presented. During the descent of the pole squat, you need to grip the pole with both hands and drive the chest up, tightening the lower back, pulling the shoulders back and tightening the lats. We want to be aiming to sit into the squat through the heels, sliding the grip down the pole as necessary, maintaining the chest up position. The chest up cue is aimed at encouraging maintenance of a neutral spine and prevent the common error of a forward lean slouch by driving thoracic extension. During the bottom position, we want the athlete to drive the knees out. The knees should build a line in the same direction as the big toe. By cueing knees out, the coach is encouraging the athlete to activate the hip extensor rotators and prevent the common error of knee valgus, where the knees fall inwards, exposing the athlete to injury. During the ascent of the pole squat, we want the athlete to maintain a neutral spine throughout, and want to coach to monitor when, if any, lumbar tucking occurs at depth. Once upright, ensure the athlete is extended at the hip, as if in a vertical plank position. Observe if the athlete has any lumbar extension, which indicates some anterior pelvic tilt, and could expose the athlete to injury when external load is added in future progressions. During the pole and stability pole squat, there are a couple of things as coaches we may want to observe. The first being watching how the athlete responds to cues. Do they understand what is meant? For example, drive the knees out over the toes, maintaining a normal lumbar spine. The second thing we want to observe is if they can achieve full range of motion with neutral spine and stability of the knee, both during the descent and ascent. If they can, then this is where we progress them onto unsupported squatting. How the athlete is set up with the Swiss ball stability squat will follow this previous model of the pole squat, but instead obviously we'll use the ball as support. If using the Swiss ball squat, we'll begin with the athlete's back to the wall and the ball positioned in the lower back. The athlete may find it comfortable to place hands in front to aid the chest up position. The third stage in progressing an athlete in a squat is to implement the plate squat. The reason we may want to use a plate squat is the athlete must now display the range of motion and stability from the previous stage with the added demand of adjusting their center of mass around the base of support. This means the athlete must maintain balance and posture throughout the squat. By holding plate with the arms extended, the athlete can sit into the squat while the plate balances their weight over their base of support. If the athlete cannot maintain the posture displayed in previous stages through full range of motion, then the issue may relate to a lack of ability to displace weight forward to maintain balance. Additionally, the athlete may simply be afraid of falling through sitting into the squat and limit their range of motion through a compensation strategy. Consequently, regression to previous stage or limiting depth until motor control is improved is recommended. Should the athlete display appropriate balance throughout the full range of motion while maintaining correct posture and alignment, they are now ready to squat with some external load. To set the athlete up in a plate squat, we want them to adopt the same stance as developed through the pole squat stage. For example, feet just on hip width, toes between forward and 30 degrees, depending on the athlete. The athlete should be comfortable, though, adopting their own stance suitable for themselves, with minimal adjustment at this stage. For the plate squat, we'd want to use a small plate around 5 kilograms, which will be held in front of the athlete with straight arms. We want to ensure there is no shrugging of the traps, as this may indicate that the plate is too heavy. Remember that the external load in this stage is there to aid the athlete's balance, not to overload the athlete. The plate will provide a counterbalance to the athlete's weight shift during the squat movement, allowing him to sit into the heels while maintaining an upright torso. The descent of the plate squat, you will again have the athlete drive the chest up, tighten the lower back, pull the shoulders back and tighten the lats. As the athlete sits during the plate squat, they are required to maintain balance and upright torso by shifting their center of mass forwards. This requires knees out and hips in to allow them space to shift their center of mass forward while maintaining an upright torso. During the bottom position of the plate squat is where the athlete will be most tested, as they have to maintain an upright torso without leaning too far forward while maintaining knees out and driving through the heels without coming on the toes. During the plate squat, as coaches, there's a couple of things we need to observe. We need to be able to identify any excessive trunk lean, observe the position of the plate throughout the descent and the ascent. There shouldn't be any drop, so it should maintain the same level. Again, we need to take note of the lumbar spine throughout the movement and identify any tucking, and take note of when this occurs so we know the depth they can reach before this occurs. If any tucking does occur at this stage and was not present in any previous stages, the driver may be a lack of pelvic control when balance is introduced to the movement. Once the athlete has successfully completed the previous stages, we'd move them on to stage 4, which is having them complete the goblet squat. The reason behind this is that the athlete has displayed the capacity to achieve the correct posture and positions through full range of motion, and the skill to stabilize and adjust their balance in relation to their position in space. The goblet squat is aimed to reinforce the squat pattern and assisting in achieving depth with the addition of some external load. By loading the athlete in front of the chest, they are forced to adjust their own balance without the counterbalance of the plate, while now being in a stronger mechanical position to handle higher loading. For some athletes, this may be enough, and the goblet squat can be loaded as necessary without the need to progress to the barbell lifts. However, this stage will prepare the athlete to maintain posture under increasing external load and develop the necessary capacities for the barbell progressions. At this stage, the athlete should be able to maintain an upright torso and neutral spine throughout. Any lumbar tucking should be minimal and the depth at which it occurs noted to prevent loading unstable lumbar positions. At position of the goblet squat, the stance will be the same as for stage 2 and stage 3. The athlete cradles a dumbbell or kettlebell against the chest. There are numerous ways to hold a dumbbell or kettlebell, and a description of each is beyond the scope of this video. The coach is encouraged to try different grips and loading positions to find one most suitable for the individual athlete. In the descent phase of the kettlebell squat, the athlete will have a chest up, gazing forward. Just like in the other phases, they'll be sitting into the squat, weight transfer through the heels. The athlete is required to balance throughout the movement as their weight transfers with little counterbalance and no support. Allow the elbows of the athlete to slide inside the knees and push them out in the bottom position. Brushing the thighs often helps the athlete to feel safer in the bottom position and ensure that an upright torso is maintained at all times. In the ascent phase, the athlete should have the same movement pattern as the pole squat and also the plate squat. The coach should assess the ability to maintain the correct posture throughout the ascent. In particular, watch for the sticking point, the angle at which the system is weakest, as this is often the phase where posture breaks down and compensation occurs. As coaches, what do we need to observe during the goblet squat? So the position of the load should encourage an upright torso and the athlete to sit between the legs. So we need to notice any forward accordion-like folding strategy and prevent it. Once load can be handled, while meeting the technical model of the goblet squat, the athlete is now able to progress to barbell variations. Should the athlete struggle with barbell positioning, the goblet squat can be used alongside the skill development to allow loading and strengthening of the squat pattern. Now that the athlete is familiar with different squatting techniques and variations, it's time to move on to barbell squats. So that is the fifth stage of this process, which is the front squat. The front squat is an essential exercise for maximal strength development, an important aspect of sport. The front squat encourages stimulation of overall strength increases, increase in ligament and tendon strength, and also an increase in bone intensity. The front squat places more emphasis on the quadriceps as well, with the weight being placed on the front of the body compared to on the back in the back squat, which we'll be discussing later. The front squat is excellent for the athlete and the coach, as it provides immediate feedback on upper body positioning, so you're able to tell if they're leaning too far forward as the elbows drop, and in some cases they drop the weight forward entirely. Therefore, the front squat is an excellent way to teach the correct posture before moving them on to the back squat. Before the athlete carries out the front squat, they need to learn the position of the bar. So the bar needs to rest on the upper front deltoids, held in place with a clean grip, hands spaced slightly wider than shoulder width apart. The elbows need to be kept high, level with the bar, and remain parallel to the floor throughout the lift. To achieve this, the athlete needs to have good core stability and strength, and also maintain a good lumbar posture. With the wrists extended, the grip needs to be relaxed with the bar resting in the fingers. Before the athlete executes the front squat, they need to make sure they're in the correct start position. The athlete needs to keep their head up, their shoulder blades pulled back with their chest out and up throughout. Their feet should be flat on the floor, and they should have the same position as they had in the first stages. Their weight also needs to be evenly distributed. The athlete is now ready to make the descent of the front squat. Before moving, they'll take a deep breath in and tighten the lower back and trunk musculature. They'll begin by flexing the ankle, knees, and hips, keeping an upright trunk, chest up, and maintaining the elbow height and also a normal lumbar curve. The knees will begin to move in line with the toes, avoiding any inward collapse as mentioned before, the knee valgus, to prevent injury. As the athlete descends, the weight will transfer backwards towards the heel. The descent of the squat needs to be slow and controlled. The descent finishes when the athlete is at the depth just before the lumbar curve or flexion occurs. Ideally, it should be when the center point of the hip passes below the top of the knee. This means that the femur must pass below parallel with the floor. The reasoning behind this is that the hamstring and the glutes do not fully activate until the hip passes the knee. Also, the pressure on the knee is reduced if the thigh passes parallel. Throughout the descent, the head needs to remain up, keeping that upright trunk and chest up. The athlete will also have a lumbar curve, and we want to see that maintenance of the elbows up high, level. We don't want to see a collapse in the chest forward or of the back. The knees should continue to move in line with the toes, avoiding any inward collapse of the knees, so we need to cue them to push the knees out. The feet will remain flat on the floor with the weight towards the heel. In the bottom position, the athlete will powerfully triple extend at the ankle, knee, and hip, leading up with the chest. The knees continue to move in line with the toes, maintaining that neutral spine, elbows up high, with that core locked tight. Weight will shift from the rear of the foot to the forefoot. The head will remain up, and the lifter will exhale at the top of the squat. Just like the previous stages, there are considerations that the coach needs to be aware of. The first being the actual back posture. so we don't want to see the rounding of the back at the top, especially with the weight distributed forwards. Therefore, the athletes should be keeping their elbows high and level throughout the lift, testing their core stability and also their strength. Again, emphasis should be placed on preventing any lumbar flexion at the bottom, so the athlete should now be able to judge the depth at which this occurs, so they should just maintain this throughout the lift. If they are able to maintain this for a number of reps, they are now ready to move on from stage 5 and to stage 6 of that of the back squat. The sixth and final stage of this progressing the squat model is to have the athlete carry out the back squats. So this is kind of the ultimate goal, the end goal of this model. So the athlete will bring everything they learned in the previous stages and put it all together to complete this motion. Why is it important that we do the back squat? The back squat is an essential exercise for maximum strength development, important for the overall strength increases, increasing ligament and tendon strength and overall bone density. And it's very transferable to sport, as strength is an important skill in many sports. Set up in the start position of the back squat, the grip and position of the bar is completely different from the front squat. We'll be gripping the bar in an overhand grip, and we want the bar to be resting on the upper trapezius, so we're doing a high bar back squat. In that position of this lift, the athlete again will be aiming to keep their head up, pulling the shoulder blades back and their chest out and up, pretending to bend the bar over their back. They'll keep their feet flat on the floor, keeping the same stance as in the previous stages, and will have their weight evenly distributed. Before the athlete makes their descent in the squat, they'll take a deep breath in, similar to the front squat, tightening their lower back and trunk musculature, and they'll begin flexing at the ankle, the knee, and the hips. We want them to keep their trunk upright, pushing their chest up and out, maintaining a lumbar curve. We want the athlete then to move their knees in line with their toes, pushing them outwards to avoid any inward collapse. As they descend, the athlete's weight will transfer backwards towards their heel. The athlete will finish the descent and enter the bottom position when they've reached the point just before the lumbar flexion occurs, which we established in the previous stages. Ideally, this should be where the femur passes parallel with the floor. As previously mentioned, the hamstring and glutes are not fully activated until the hip passes the knee. The athlete again will be keeping their head up to counter the chest dropping, so they want to keep their upright trunk and their chest up and out. Again, we want them to move their knees in line with the toes and avoid any inward collapse, and their feet will be staying on the floor with their weight towards the heel. For the ascent of the back squat, the athlete will powerfully triple extend the ankle, knee and hips, leading with their chest. Knees continue to move in line with the toes, maintaining a neutral spine, resisting the urge to lean forward. The weight will shift from the rear of the foot to the forefoot, and again the head always remains up, and when at the top of the squat they will exhale. Squat being a complex movement, and the key aim of this progress model and video, we as coaches have a couple of things we want to observe when the athlete is carrying it out. The main one is that they've learned from each of the previous stages and can bring across what they have learned into this back squat. So for example, them reaching the correct depth before their lumbar flexion occurs, that they can keep that lumbar spine straight. Moreover, there are a lot more technical issues that as coaches we need to pick up on, and that we're going to go into detail now. First technical issue the athlete may have when performing the back squat is hand positioning on the bar. Their hands should be evenly spaced shoulder width apart on the bar, but sometimes some athletes are unable to have shoulder width due to poor shoulder external rotation. So to combat this, they need to have a wider grip. The next issue, and one that is recurring throughout this process and video, is the athlete needs to stand extended throughout the spine, hips and knees, bracing the spinal musculature. However, it is common that they're unable to hold extended position, as shown in the video above. So we need to ensure that the athlete has no spinal pathology that limits their ability to extend thoracic and lumbar spine. To correct this, the athlete needs to be able to hold correct posture without the bar or load, and this can be done through following the previous stages. This technical area that needs to be highlighted and can be seen in the video above is the potential depth problems and the athlete being unable to reach parallel. So his feet should be positioned just outside shoulder width with toes pointing outwards, and the hips go behind with him flexing at the heels, knees and hips. So to correct this, the athlete above needs to experience a little bit more of his stance and maybe shift his feet wider and point the toes out more. As previously mentioned, the athlete's feet should remain flat on the floor, not seen in the back squat, but in the stability ball video above. It is often common for the heel to come off the floor. The issue may be ankle range of motion. The athlete then may need to widen their stance and turn out their toes more. They may also benefit from raising the heel, for example, using a weightlifting shoe. The most important technical errors that comes up in this video again and again is the athlete leaning too far forward, as you can see in the clip above. We don't want to allow any lumbar flexion or thoracic flexion at the spine. They should be able to maintain anterior trunk lean. So we should be encouraging them to drive and extend the hip, ensure that again they can anterior and posteriorly tilt the pelvis in an unloaded situation. Maybe we need to regress this athlete back through the previous steps so they can maintain an anterior trunk lean. We may also want to encourage the athlete to keep their chest up and to keep their elbows under the bar and extend their body upwards. Important technical error is the athlete's knees deviating inwards and the hips internally rotating. We want them to maintain the knee over the foot at all times, so the athlete may have possible weakness in the hip abductors. So is the load too heavy, for example? So maybe we need to regress them back to single leg exercises or through the previous stages to reinforce squatting movement patterns. One technical error worth mentioning, and occurs in the descent phase as seen in the video above, is the hips rising at a higher tempo than the bar. The hips ideally should raise at the same tempo as the bar. This indicates that the athlete has a weakness in hip extensors, and if under load, maybe the load is too heavy. So to resolve this as coaches, we should encourage the athletes to extend the hip forcefully through the sticking point. By now, the athletes should have worked their way through the previous 6 steps, learning the correct form and technique, and now knowing the benefit of loaded front and back squat. This is where they should be aiming to go next. Videos above show that even with load, that the front squat and the back squat need to be carried out with the correct posture and technique. We hope this video provides an effective 6-step model for progressing the squat for beginner squatters and also beginner coaches, and we thank you for watching.